Now, the African Union, as we know it, is wrapping up a high-level reflection on the recent unconstitutional changes in government. In just the space of 2 years, about 6 African countries had their democratically elected governments toppled, and most of these countries are within West Africa. Well, my colleague Kenneth JC has been monitoring the high-level conference here in Accra and comes through with this report.
Sub-Saharan Africa has become the epicenter of terrorism, which now accounts for over half of all deaths from terrorism. The latest Global Terrorism Index shows Burkina Faso suffered the worst impact from terrorism, with deaths increasing by 68%, despite attacks decreasing by 17%. Since 2020, there has been 9 coups in West Africa, Central Africa and the Sahel region, with Mali opening the floodgates when the army staged a mutiny and subsequently executed a coup, which was led by Colonel Assimi Goïta. Burkina Faso joined with 2 military coups in 2022 and 2023, and then there was Gabon. The Gambia, Guinea-Bissau and Sao Tome and Principe have all witnessed failed coup attempts over the same period. The surge in unconstitutional changes of government have been fueled by citizens' disenchantment with their leadership, a sentiment echoed by the Executive Director of the Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Professor Henry Prempeh.
38% of respondents say, only 38% of respondents say they are satisfied with the way democracy is working in their country. So while overwhelming majorities of Africans continue to express a preference for democracy and reject all the other alternatives, and note that Africans are familiar with the alternative to democracy because the first 30 years of African independence, from 1960 to 1990 essentially, was the period of autocratic, non-democratic rule. So it's not as though Africans are not familiar with the alternative to democracy. They are familiar with them. So when you ask them, do you like this one or do you like the other one? They overwhelmingly reject the alternatives that I have mentioned: one-man rule, one-party rule, military rule, which are the alternatives to democracy familiar to us on this continent.
The African Union's Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, expressed deep concerns about the military takeovers that have occurred on the continent in the last 5 years. Ambassador Adeoye emphasized that the AU has zero tolerance for unconstitutional change of government and assured of the Union's commitment towards addressing the re-emergence of military coups on the continent.
It is also necessary at the same time for the African Union to declare once and again, once and for all, that the African Union has zero tolerance for undemocratic means to power. It is also necessary that we must return our continent to the axis of progressive democracy.
In January this year, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger announced their withdrawal from ECOWAS, alleging collusion between the regional bloc and Western powers to destabilize their nations. President Akufo-Addo in his speech emphasized the need for unified union and robust state institutions to ensure adherence to constitutional principles.
I think that we need our secretariats, elected officials, international civil servants, think tanks, and civil society actors to provide policymakers with innovative and practical recommendations. Given the complexities associated with addressing the challenges we're confronted with, one cannot be prescriptive. However, the one thing that is critical, and for which we need our multilateral institutions to make significant investments, is relationship building.
The 2-day event is expected to devise pragmatic solutions to Africa's political challenges.
Well, so based on these reflections, the question still remains, is the African Union fit for purpose, and is it ready going into the future to curb these instances of growing insurgency, violent extremism, and also, worst off, the cases of military takeovers across the entire continent. West Africa is top on the agenda, and for the Pan-African Business Forum, they believe that urgent actions, including the need for new leadership at the African Union level, will bring a spirit of rejuvenation that will also birth some sort of calm across the African continent. But how do we achieve that? Joining me in studio now is Dr. Agbeshi Ladislav, who is the president of the Pan-African Business Forum, joining me in studio now. Thank you so much, sir, for spending some time with us and joining us in studio out of your big schedule. Of course, it's good to see you again, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, all the listeners, and Happy New Year to Africa.
Indeed. We'll talk about a number of happenings across the continent, but let's start off from what we've just seen in the last 2 days. And of course, you've been speaking to your friends there, the African Union, who are holding this conference here in Accra. We've seen deliberations. We've seen high-ranked, political officers, government officials, diplomats, civil society, and all these groups have been represented at the reflection that we're seeing here in Accra, targeted at curbing the increasing spate of military takeovers within Africa. West Africa, as we know it, has been top on the list. What's your personal reflection about what we are seeing in the last few years? And what's your diagnosis of this challenge that we're facing, especially within West Africa, where you come from as well?
Anyway, thank you very much, and thank you to listeners. And I believe that we are at the crossroad of a big change in our continent. We need to have a different kind of reflections about how the governance is going to be done in our continent, and we realize that the democracy, which is supposed to be ruled by people for the people, have failed.
Right.
That's why you could see those kind of instability in our continent, and it's going to continue. And no amount of meetings and all those can change it if the fundamentals of those things cannot be addressed, which is looking after our own people, the youth without jobs, infrastructure does not exist, education, there's nothing. If those basic...
Yeah, but we keep, I'm sorry for cutting through, we keep referring to these points, and it's not as though they were not prevalent in the past. West Africa, Africa has been a continent that has suffered the economic challenge, infrastructural gap. These are challenges that used to be prevalent. So what's different now?
No, the problem is that we are the fastest growing integration, regional integration in the world after European Union.
Right.
And where development has seen greater progress, certain kind of, if you look at some of our index in terms of development in Africa, West Africa has done better than many other places, except apart from the recent conflict. It is that direction that West Africa is. We have a market of close to 1 billion people, which is quite very important to our people. But the fundamental is that since 1960, certain kind of parameters has never changed. And we have individuals who take advantage of that democracy, which is not more relevant today in the context of Africanism. It needs to be adjusted a little bit, and that's why you could see those kind of. I'm not saying that the military are right, but what I'm saying, the people are right to request for change of government.
And that's what the military, and that's what the military, you believe, is taking advantage of. But we're paying, a very high price for it, isn't it? Look at what's happening in Niger, in Mali, in Burkina Faso. These Sahelian countries now are going to the extreme. They're threatening of leaving, first of all, the trade bloc, the largest trade bloc on the African continent, the Economic Community of West African States. Niger says, Mali says, and of course, Burkina Faso is also joining same, indicating that they'll be breaking away from the sub-regional body. That's the extent to which we're paying a price for these military takeovers. You're saying they're justified?
The diagnostic of the issues of those three countries has not been properly looked at. That's why we are facing those kind of issues. I'm not in for them to, because the ECOWAS has never functioned properly. They have never been responsible. That's why this institution, ECOWAS, the regional bodies, have been always like a PO boss, just like African Union. So they've never been a real integrated organization for the people of our region. And that's why you could see what is happening. Because before all these things happen, they are indicators. You see people marching in countries, people are saying, stop, stop. They don't do anything till they are faced with the problem. So I believe that we don't need to blame them, we need to blame ECOWAS. And ECOWAS need to do better. Because ECOWAS is in the verge of disappearing. Because there is a prominent change in many other African countries, which will happen before the end of the year in West Africa. Some of them will happen again. But are we going to blame them? You saw in Niger, there's a delegation from the Undersecretary of United States, which is coming to Niger. It means the Americans are understanding that there is a pattern to deal with these people. Right. There is a reality there. There is a delegation of a very powerful delegation, which is going to be led with Mrs. Murphy, with Ambassador Kathleen, which is going to lead those discussions. Listen to them, like we've been saying. We cannot just condemn them. We need to listen to them
and engage them. Engage them, as you're saying. But there are two, legs to this conversation I want us to look at. The democracies that are still surviving within West Africa now, Ghana, Benin, Nigeria, and the rest. We'll talk about the future of these democracies, and also look at the African Union, which is now, of course, something you are looking at. The fact that you believe that's where the true change must be coming from. I've been engaging the Commissioner of Political Affairs for the Economic Community of West African States, Ambassador Fattah Musa, who was in Accra over the weekend. And of course, I put a number of questions to him, asking and seeking to find out if ECOWAS is indeed on top of matters when it comes to dealing with these cases of military takeover. Listen.
We've had these hiccups before in the history of ECOWAS, right? There was a time Mauritania withdrew from ECOWAS. And later on, Mauritania wanted to come back. Okay, and there have been a lot of misunderstanding between ECOWAS and the three Sahelian states who say they are withdrawing, right? And I am not saying that ECOWAS did everything right. Okay, and I think the heads of state have re-examined their approach, and at the last summit of ECOWAS, extraordinary summit, they decided to, pull back a bit on many of them. So I think this is a goodwill gesture by the the authority of ECOWAS, heads of state and government. And we expect, because since then, what we have realized that the populations are happy with the decision taken by ECOWAS. They were jubilating over the reopening of the borders and then, all other measures that were taken. And now, the boys in the court of the three countries, we feel that in unity lies our strength. And then there is no way any single country or even two countries or three can actually band together to solve the contemporary challenges that we are facing. Terrorism knows no borders. If you remember, the northern part of Ghana today is being threatened by what is happening in Burkina. Cote d'Ivoire, the same. Togo, Benin. So the thing is, if we do not collaborate, cross-border collaboration between, say, Ghana and Burkina Faso, then the task of counter-terrorism is going to be even more difficult. So this is it. So I think when everybody thinks soberly, we'll realize that there is the need to reestablish that unity and solidarity, within ECOWAS. And we know there have been a lot also of misinformation, a lot of propaganda, and we need to clear all that. So we are continuing engagement with the three countries, and we hope that any differences that exist will be resolved without ECOWAS, sort of compromising on its core principles. That is, military rule is not acceptable.
But the argument is that the way forward partly is to preserve, some of the established democracies that we have. Someone was just setting the example of Togo, of Senegal, and what's happening there. At the latest, it's on Senegal. Of course, we've seen some opposition leaders freed. Mm-hmm. Is that a signal that democracy is being restored and that you're protecting the others who have not fallen into the harm's way, if we should call it that?
Exactly. Listen, I can give you so many examples of what ECOWAS has been doing to shore up, fragile communities. In Sierra Leone, after the election there last, June, the opposition boycotted all governance structures, parliament and everything. ECOWAS, together with the African Union, went there to make sure that we had dialogue, between the opposition and the government, and they set up the cross-party coalition, platform to resolve some of the outstanding issues. So the opposition is back in parliament. Right, there was an attempted coup, jailbreak and others, over the holiday period. ECOWAS rushed in there, to make sure that the situation did not escalate into it. But you see, ECOWAS does not always publicize a lot of the things that we do behind the scenes. So we are doing that. And in Senegal, we have made pronouncements when we have deemed it necessary to do, believing and knowing that institutions in Senegal are resilient. When we are talking about institutions, we are talking about civil society, the citizens, and also the legal framework, like the Constitutional Council's role over there, and that Senegal could be self-regulating. And our position have been proven right. So we accompany them, we are monitoring, we are following what is happening, and when it becomes necessary for us to, intervene, of course, ECOWAS will not hesitate.
I was just talking about some of the opposition leaders that have been freed. Is that a signal that there's goodwill and that the elections would hold, say, in April? Do we even know the time?
Absolutely. The elections are supposed to hold on the 24th of March this year. It has already been decided. The campaign is ongoing. The fact that they have released Ousmane Sonko, the main opposition figure, does not mean that he is naturally going to take part in the elections, because there was a process to select the candidates. And unfortunately, he couldn't. We'll see what happens there. But we are very confident that these elections will take place, and we have already deployed our advance team. They are in the country, and the feedback we are getting is that the campaign is going on normally, in the country. So we are sure that the hiccup that we've seen in Senegal is not going to degenerate, and that the system will self-regulate, and then we'll have the normal flow of a constitutional order in the country.
Well, the assurance there, as you see it coming through from ECOWAS, they believe that they're on top of matters, and indeed they're dealing with all of the issues. But Dr. Akpesian, thanks for staying with us, because you're making this case that beyond ECOWAS, we need to go to the continental level. We'll talk about what kind of leadership we need there. But let's start off, by talking about pre-existing, still existing or surviving democracies within West Africa. That also should be of concern to us. Ghana is going for elections this year. Togo, I believe. Senegal, very controversial issue there. And of course, I don't know about Benin, where you come from as well. Let's look at these countries that are still surviving, still within the space of ECOWAS. We must take steps to protect them.
Definitely, because some of them have a very strong background, like Ghana.
Right.
And is a strong democracy, and things you don't need to worry about that, because we have a strong leadership. There is a framework which is working very well in Ghana since some time with the real founders of the democracy, from Rawlings to Kufuor.
Right.
And we've seen certain kind of pattern of change of government and governance and progress in the country. As much as I do agree with a certain kind of sentiment in the public of dissatisfaction, which is general in the continent, I think all the government have done very well. And we've seen now Ado and preparing a very good ambassador of our continent,
right.
And in some extent. Now, Ghana, if we isolated Ghana in terms of democracy and come back to Senegal
yes.
and other countries.
But Senegal obviously is the burning issue now because of the elections, yeah.
You agree with me that in Senegal, the country, the population, the youth has been given signal more than 2 years. Something is wrong here.
Okay.
They are on the streets. They keep on going on the streets.
Yeah.
What you don't see in Ghana, you understand? So people supposed to go there and dialogue with them and find out exactly what.
And you're back again to ECOWAS, I believe.
ECOWAS, yes.
Saying that they should have been
there.
engaging long
now,
before.
when they are faced with a problem, they will start being a PO boss, sending the letters. This is some of the problem. The problem with what we are facing in Senegal, Benin, and to some extent other countries is that the democracy we are having is run by individuals for themselves. It's not by democracy. It's worse than autocracy. You understand?
Right.
Which you don't see here. Some of the arms of the government of the state are working properly. No, I'm not saying 100%, but in the case of Benin, you saw people are now the electoral code has been changed by one individual, and you need to have 15% of the people of the parliament to support you before you are candidate. It's like one person going to elect. So why do you think that nothing will happen there? Why do you expect that they are not going to remove him? Who will? It is if we are in the if Niger, Mali,
yes,
and Burkina Faso. Benin is might join soon, and because they need the port. You understand? It's not about, but the people are suffering in Benin. They keep on going to court, ECOWAS court, ECOWAS parliament.
And you believe they are not getting any results.
They're not getting.
But these are countries, sovereign nations, that make their own laws. We don't do that. We don't make the laws for them. Senegal has its own laws. Togo, for instance, has its own law. I recall that came up during the conversation with the Ambassador Fatah. The point was that these are countries that are making their own laws. ECOWAS wasn't there when their MPs, their lawmakers were in parliament supporting these laws.
But that's why we are saying that we need to revisit the background of all these kind of
issues.
When we are,
you feel
we are
they're
sufficient. We are at the break of having the biggest GDP. You understand? Africa does not need aid. We don't want aid anymore. So we need somebody.
So we are over aid. That's the question. Because where the African Union is now, obviously, it's not as though they've not done anything. But speaking about the continental,
they've done more talk and conference than action.
I see.
And the African Union become a center of conflict resolution. And they don't have even enough resources. You understand? We need to have a different kind of reform in that African Union. That's why we are saying we want a complete change. We want a new CEO. And that's why we are saying that Dr. Fayemi is the best candidate.
Okay, speaking about having a new chairperson for the AU, obviously that opportunity will come, and that will be in just a spate of a few months, if not a year, as many are estimating it to happen. Obviously, many countries have started jostling, putting forward their preferred candidates to lead the African Union going into the future, because Moussa Faki obviously will be perhaps gone by the time the next elections for that chairperson position will be done. He's obviously leaving office.
Serious disappointment.
Yeah. Well, that's your assessment of him. But the point is, who else can do that?
We believe the ECOWAS to rally behind. We are suggesting as an organization, because we've done our own homework, and we've talked to various stakeholders, partners, the development agencies, and we believe that there's only one candidate, Dr. Fayemi. That's why we are recommending to President Tinubu to make that decision, so that ECOWAS must rally behind that person. it's not going to be just from Nigeria, it's going to be from ECOWAS. Because where we are going, you see, Dr. Fayemi is a professor, a scholar for, he has vast experience from Asia, America, Europe. He's a lecturer in those universities. He's a specialist of a conflict resolution. Mm-hmm. He's a part of a development goal, and also in security studies, you understand? What we are looking for, we are not looking for just Minister of Foreign Affairs from somewhere, government appointee. We want, because we have social, economic development issues for the continent. And we need somebody of that status, of caliber, with a country with that strength. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at President Tinubu, mm-hmm. he made it that my term of office is not only for Nigerians for the sub-Sahara, he's looking at making an impact. Mm-hmm. And we are challenging that this is an opportunity
to demonstrate that. Once again, that will bring up the conversation around Nigeria's hegemony. It's always been under some level of controversy, the fact that Big Brother Nigeria wants to have its way simply because of the numbers, 200+ million population, and so the feeling is everyone should go with what they say. Why not allow other countries to also come up, for instance?
That is where we make it. You see, we've done that one with Concession Damizu. Mm-hmm. And you see the effects. It was a bit effective. Even today, they make one of the wings of the African Union in her name.
Right.
It has never happened. Because those days, we've already seen the foresight. Why big countries? Because the African Union need a CEO from a big country. We are no more. You cannot ask somebody from Gambia. And when you say
big country, this might sound a bit offensive to the other countries that are watching us now, referring to Nigeria as a big country, quote and unquote.
But you see, African Union gone are the days mm-hmm. where we should be doing the job of is your turn. Mm-hmm. For the next 20 years to come,
right.
we want a serious partner, mm-hmm. a serious CEO mm-hmm. to lead that organization. We cannot miss our development goal. We have 30 trillion, and we want to meet. And Africa is going to produce in a couple of years, and by 2063, 180 billionaire,
right.
and 25 trillionaire. Mm-hmm. We want somebody serious who have tested what is wealth, mm-hmm. somebody who has never been a conflictual, mm-hmm. and who believe in development a goal, and to come and sustain that. We don't go to African Union to solve conflict. We go there to develop our country.
I see. Since you're an African, your final word as we wrap up this conversation.
I just think that we are in a very good pattern mm-hmm. as an African. Right. I just know that we should stop entertaining aids from other partners. We want partners to come and share their experience, their technical know-how with us. Mm-hmm. And we have everything in the continent. And I want our presidents and everything to focus their mind on our continent. And I'm not of the view like you know it very well. I want to partner with everybody, including the US, America, Europe, and everything, which can benefit Africa.
That we need. Well, Dr. Agbesi, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you
in studio. It's always a pleasure having you here. And that's all we have for you in this package of Connect Africa. We'll see you again. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com. More stories there for you. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.